Hey guys, welcome back to GuitarAnimal.com. I'm Trent, and today we're going to work on the gold top guitar that we showed you in one of the previous videos. We've obviously outfitted it with a few parts since the last time you saw it. First thing we're going to do today is we're going to go over how to oil a fingerboard. I talked about that in one of the previous videos. I'm going to show you how to do that, and then while that oil is soaking in, I'll go over some of the parts on this guitar, talk about where I got some of the parts, how I chose them, and that kind of thing. So belly on up and let's see what I'm going to do here. Alright guys, so we're going to put some oil on this fingerboard today. The kind of oil I'm using is Fret Doctor. We'll have a link to it at our website you can check out. This particular stuff, you can read about it online. It basically soaks into the wood a little bit better, I think. Darkens the fingerboard. You can see this fingerboard's a little bit light. It's got a lot of nice striping in it. But this is just going to make it a little bit darker, bring out the color a little bit better. And since I don't have the strings on the guitar yet, because we're just putting it together, it's a great time to oil the board. So I'm going to show you how to do this. It's pretty easy. We're just going to run some oil down the fingerboard. I got a lot right there, so we'll just take a paper towel, pick it up, and move it down the fingerboard. The idea is to get it on the top of the fingerboard, but not over the edge. It doesn't matter if you do, the edge is, the back of the neck is finished, but you want to get it all the way up against all the frets. And we're just going to work this in all the way up against the nut. And I'm using a paper towel. You could use a cloth, might be a little more durable. I find a paper towel works just fine. You can see the rest of the roll is supporting the neck. On a Les Paul, because of the tilted back headstock, we do not want to rest the guitar on the end of the headstock. You're asking for breakage if you do that. If you push down too hard, it'll snap the neck off right here behind the nut. Alright, so we're just working this in. You take your time. We're probably going to end up doing this a couple times. And just a few drops on the neck. A little more cautious towards the body. We don't want it running all over the body and under the pickups and all that. But you can easily see where I've put the oil and where the oil's not been yet. At least the first time you do this. Once it's oily and you're putting a second coat on, not quite as easy to determine where I've been. You have to look at really the shine, how shiny it is in the light. Just work it in. It's really nice if you have music playing at this time. Maybe we can add that. I don't know. We'll see. Alright, now I'm up on the fingerboard. I'm just going to use my fingertip, making sure I'm not rubbing it all across the finish, the face of the finish. Wouldn't hurt the finish, but you just have to get it off of there, so best if you can keep it off. Yeah, almost finished there. You want to make sure you get everything coated. You don't want a light spot. You can see that this oil is soaking in pretty nicely. So this particular board was fairly dry. Go back and make sure we've got plenty of coverage. Alright, we're going to give this coat a few minutes to soak in, and while that's happening, I'm actually going to go over some of the parts I chose for this particular build on this guitar. The reason it has black plastic on it instead of cream, because usually gold top would have cream, is the very first gold tops they made in 1957 with humbucking pickups, this larger size pickup, came with black hardware because they didn't have the plastic, the black plastic or the cream plastic wasn't available yet. They didn't have that worked out. So they just used the black plastic they had available for the Les Paul Customs that they were already making. I like the look of it, so I'm going for black plastic because of that. I like the look against the gold. It's a nice contrast. This is a regular Gibson part here. This truss rod cover is a vintage style. It's very thin. The printing is like the old 50s style. I like the look of that, as well as this aged switch tip there. The rings are a really nice part. They're made by a company called Wiz, which is in Croatia, believe it or not, but here in this country you can buy them from a company called Creamtone. We'll have links to both those companies, Wiz pickups and Creamtone parts. They're taller. You probably notice they're taller. Also, the screws are black, and that is correct for a 57 gold top. Would have black screws instead of silver. This is a Gibson ABR, And you'll probably notice that I do have the insert in the body. This particular body was set up for the Gibson Nashville bridge, which is the larger bridge. I just like the thinner one because I'm used to the vintage style guitars. And Creamtone actually makes studs that are larger on the bottom that will screw right into your Nashville anchors, and then they're thinner on top, so you can fit an ABR on there. And that's something that you can get from Creamtone. Really nice part. This is in nickel, as well as nickel pickups here. And then the nickel bridge. Now this is an aluminum bridge, super lightweight. If this tailpiece, it almost feels like it's made out of plastic. It's so light. And then it has a nickel coating on it. And I got that from a company called Kluson. And it is made in the USA. It's a very nice part and relatively inexpensive. The Gibson aluminum bridge like this is about $200, and you can buy this one on eBay from Kluson for $24. So I would recommend doing that. You'll notice they're not dirty here. They're actually aged a little bit, and I went through a process of aging the metal parts, not the pickups, they were already aged, but the bridge and the tailpiece are brand new. I just aged them yesterday. I did some vapor and muriatic acid, and you can look online and see processes for how you do that. You don't put the acid right on the metal, you actually expose the metal to the vapor muriatic acid. It's pretty nasty stuff to deal with, so if you do decide to go there and try it, use caution. You don't want to breathe the stuff, and make sure you pay attention to exactly what you're doing with it and how to dispose of it. On the other end of the guitar here, we're going to be installing some tuners, and we'll get to that later. I don't know if you can see that in this shot, but you will be when we get to that. All right, you can see the oil here is soaking in nicely, so we're going to give that a few more minutes, and then we're going to come back to it. All right, guys, we've let this soak in. I put 2 coats on it, and I've been letting it soak for maybe 10 minutes or so, and now I'm just going to wipe the excess off the top, just a paper towel on the top, and just basically get the pooling of the oil off. We don't want to get that on the strings. I have one string on this because I was just holding, again, the bridge and the tailpiece on. We talked about that when we did a restring on a Les Paul, and that the bridge and the tailpiece come off if you don't have something to hold them on. So I have a G string holding them on there, and it's a plain string, so if I get a little oil on it, I can wipe it off and it'll be fine. This is a brand new guitar blank. This was a 2017 we chose to do this build with. Again, it's going to be our gold top satin finish for the videos. And I think it's going to be a really nice guitar here. And you just wipe this side to side. You don't really need to press too hard. You just want to basically remove the oil that's on the surface. I don't know if you can tell from that angle or not. I'll pick the guitar up in a minute, but this fingerboard went several shades darker. It was very light and striped, and now it's dark and striped. So I think it made a drastic improvement to the look of it, and I'm sure the wood appreciated it. All right, we'll get one more paper towel here. And if I get any on the guitar itself, or sometimes it runs down the edge, so we'll check that out at the end. Just back and forth. Also, if the frets were dirty, this will clean them off. This is something that you probably would only want to do to your guitar maybe once a year. You can really just watch the color of the wood, observe it, and when it becomes light, it's time to give it a drink. Depends on your climate as well, how humid it is where you live. All right, as you can see, I took some of the oil off there, and the dark color is just the frets, the polish from the frets. I'm just going to take the back of the neck and wipe it off just in case any oil got back there. All right, so then if you look at this, I don't know if you can tell, if you compare it to the beginning of the video, see how much darker that fingerboard is. It really looks like a different guitar. Again, that's Fret Doctor. You can check them out. We'll have a link to their site. And this little bottle here is about $15, I think. That's probably a lifetime supply for most people. I go through a lot of guitars, and I've only used about half of it. All right, next up is going to be tuners. We'll get the shot realigned, and I'll be right back with you. All right, we just finished oiling the fingerboard on this guitar, and one thing I didn't mention, if you decide to use an oil other than what I was using, which is fine, you can use lemon oil, things like that, boar oil, a linseed, just make sure that you get something that has no silicone in it. If you have silicone in it, that's bad. It'll soak in around the wood edges, and if you ever need to do any refinish work, you'll never get paint to stick to the guitar. So no silicone, that's the rule. Okay, we're gonna put on some tuners today, install the tuners. I installed 3 of them already. So when you're going to buy a button like a Keystone button, which looks like the old Gibson style buttons, you might look at this and say, oh, this is exactly what I need. They look almost identical, but there are differences. This button in my right hand has a push-in ferrule that goes into a much smaller hole than what's in this headstock. So if you purchase these would not work. They're just not going to fit in that ferrule. They're not going to be, that ferrule's not going to tighten up in that headstock. So you have to be careful. You want to get the ones when you have a larger hole like this that have a screw-in bushing. Let me pull one of the bushings out and I'll show you what I mean. You just have to be sure that you have the right part. It's got a collar like this, and it will come with a washer, and this will actually go through the face, and then it screws into the tuner. I like this button a little bit better. It's a little bit heavier. I mean, obviously if this headstock had the smaller holes, I wouldn't have a problem using the older style bushing button with the push-in bushing, but for this one, the holes were this size, so this is what we're going to go with. This particular button that I'm installing today actually says Grover Deluxe as opposed to Gibson Deluxe. Main reason I got that, it's the same exact part, and it's about $10 cheaper per set, and it's the same thing. So I went with the Grovers. So I installed 3 on the other side already. I'm going to show you how to do this today. We're going to flip the headstock over. All right, so we're going to place these. Now, whenever you're placing a tuner on a headstock, and I'm going to mention this because I have seen over the years several times people who have installed their tuning machines upside down and backwards. If there's ever any printing on the back of the tuning machine, you should be able to read that when you were holding the guitar straight up and down and looking at the back of the headstock. You should be able to read clearly what it says. If you would put it on backwards like this and it's upside down, you actually have that tuner backwards. That's a fairly big deal because the inside of the tuning machine has gears that are cut in such a way that they want to experience tension on one side as opposed to the other. So you want to make sure that you get that right. All right, so we just basically lay this into the hole here. It's going to be somewhat of a loose fit. This particular guitar had already had tuners installed, and they were just removed, and they were the same type, so these line up really nicely. You do have to watch sometimes when you get different types of tuners, they'll require different holes in the headstock. You might have to drill additional holes, or you may have to fill holes. These fit perfectly, and then we're just going to use these little screws and start them in the back. Screwing them in. I'm not going to put them all the way in, I'm just going to start them. And there'll be 2 per tuner. Just, you can look down through there and make sure that the hole's lined up. It should be very easy to put them into the hole if they've already been drilled. Alright, and we're just going to do that for the 3 tuners on this side. All the tuners for this side are exactly the same, so you don't have to pick out one or another. All the shaft lengths are the same. So. And again, I'm not bringing them all the way down, just starting them. We'll tighten them up later. And the last one is for the 6th string. It's really nice when the headstock's pre-drilled. Makes this a very easy installation. If you are drilling holes in the headstock, be very careful that you don't drill all the way through the headstock. Yeah. That's what I get for saying this was an easy installation. Well, there we go again. I'm going to get Debbie to come over here in a minute and put this screw in. Alright. Get that one to start. Now I'm going to bring them down until they're just flush, not totally tight, but just flush. It's always best to get your screws started first before you start tightening things. Finger tight. Like I say, at the end we'll tighten these up. Alright. And we'll flip the guitar back over. can see the ones that we're working on. We don't have any collars yet. So we're going to take the collar and the washer. The washer has an edge on it that ramps upward as opposed to the back, which is flat. The flat side goes against the headstock. And we're just going to finger these on, make sure that they're started. All right, and again, we're just going to finger tighten these. A lot of times when you buy a brand new guitar, these tuners, when you take your strings off for the first time to change them, you want to check these. A lot of times they're loose because the guitar was freshly finished. They don't tighten these very tight at the factory, particularly with imports. So that may be half the reason your guitar is not staying in tune. So you want to tighten them the first time after a string change. All right, now this is a 10mm size here. I'm going to use the box end so I don't jump off and slide across the face of the guitar. And I could really crank these down with this particular tool. I do not want to do that. I make sure they're firmly seated. I want them to be snug. I do not want to crush the wood. So they're tight. And then, you know, I check these periodically as I'm changing strings just to make sure that they haven't worked loose. The guitar does vibrate and these things can get loose, but do not over tighten them. You can strip them out. So snug but not crushing. It's a very shallow nut, so make sure you have this firmly seated. And those are tight. So now we'll go to the other side. Let me get rid of this ramp. And we're just going to snug these up. They should move. It's a wood screw, so it's going to move and then it's going to want to stop. And when it stops, you stop. You don't want to strip out the wood. This is mahogany. It's rather soft. So when it stops, just stop turning. And it's tight. All right. And that's how you install tuning machines on the Les Paul. Alright guys, so I hope you enjoyed the video on how to oil your fingerboard. It definitely darkened the fingerboard on this particular guitar. Again, I encourage you to go to the beginning of the shot and look at what this looks like, and then look at it now, and it just really made it several shades darker. The tuning machines look great. They fit perfect. I'm going to get ready to put some strings on here. And the next thing's up for this gold guitar is we have a wiring harness coming from Tone Man, and it's going to have 50s paper and oil caps. And it's going to have Bourne's pots, which are really high quality potentiometers. And we're going to install that. I'll get the wiring finished. I'll show you what that looks like in the back after it's done. And then we're going to do intonation and setup on the guitar. And this will be ready to play probably in the studio by the end of the week. See you next video.